Hello and welcome, it's Pamela here, and in this video I'll be showing you how I created a really bright and colourful art journal page, mainly using a lot of Jane Davenport products which I've been collecting quite a bit of recently. And I'm working in Jane's Canvas journal, which is the first time I'm using it, so I've decided to decorate or art journal on the very front page, and I'm also going to follow that page or that spread into the inside cover of the book. I'm using some of Jane's collage papers, which I found are really bright and colourful. If you don't have them, you could always just use similar paints or inks to make a similar background, but these were just really handy as I had them and wanted to get them used. I was originally going to do a background with my Dylusion paints, but then I remembered I had the collage papers and just wanted to put them to use really. So I'm starting off my background using those, and I've ripped them to size, cut them with the scissors, and then just ripped around the edges and ripped the bottom parts off, which have a kind of different swirly pattern, but I will reattach them to my pages. So the first thing I'm doing is using some of Prima's soft matte gel. You could use any matte medium to adhere your collage papers to your journal. But yeah, I'm using that, and the collage papers can get a few air bubbles under them. So as you'll see, as I'm applying it underneath, I'm just using my finger there to try and push any of the air out. And I'll then go over the paper again with some soft matte gel. Yeah, matte gel, just to make sure they're completely adhered. So here you can see I'm doing the same thing then on the inside cover. And I just thought it was really nice that when you open a book, you've got one large spread to see. I won't make this page possibly the focal point, but it will just be a continuation, so it is pretty much a double spread. As you can see, I'm just going over it all again with the soft matte gel and just making sure especially that I apply it really well around the edges. And this page actually was pretty flat, but I'm just making sure any air bubbles are pushed out. And then I'll just make sure, speed up the drying, just using my hot air tool, heat tool, leave-in. So I'm totally tongue-tied today. Once that's dry, I'm going back over with those extra little pieces that I ripped off at the bottom. I don't want to waste them, and I thought they had a lot of colour to the spread. I kind of just really like those squiggly patterns. So I did think originally about running them all along the bottom of the double pages, the double spread. But I decided in the end to just run them next to each other and attach them along the side. And the small part that I've got left, I've just put over in the other corner. And this will really be my focal page. Once they're all dry, I then want to add a bit more of my own colour and just make those collage papers really my own by adding some of the Dylusions paint through some stencils. And here I'm just using the kind of grid pattern that I've got on one of the Art by Marlene stencils, and I'm then going to use a really cute mandala stencil that I've got. In case you're wondering, that stencil is by Pronti, and the Dylusions paint colour that I'm using there is, I'll just check, that's squeezed orange. Although it does look quite yellow, it definitely is orange in the bottle. The first colour that I used was Blue Lagoon, also Dylusions paint. And then now I'm applying some of the Postbox Red, and that's through a Paper Artsy stamp. And I just like the stenciling. I think I always go a bit overboard with stenciling, but I do love it. It's added so much extra texture to the page, and I've already picked out a focal point. And I think the colours really kind of blend in with those, as well as the collage papers. Plus that postbox red is really a good match for those collage paper, the bits that I've added onto the side. I think it really matches really well, so I think they'll go really nicely together. I'm then doing a few paint splatters even, using some of the Tangerine Dream, and I'll also add a bit of the, if I can make it out, Black Marble Dilutions paint. And I often do my paint splatters the same way, which is to slightly water it down and then just flick off with a paintbrush from an acrylic block. And I find you get quite a wide spray of the paint splatters that way, which is great for the effect I wanted, as I do get all over the page and it's really quick and easy to do. Now you can see that I've just pulled apart a napkin that was, I think Jane Davenport's got 2 sets of napkins, possibly more, but this was from one of those sets. I used a bit of washi on each corner, which is a really handy tip if you want to split napkins apart. That I can't remember where I saw that, but I'd seen it on someone else's videos, so gave it a try, and it worked really well for separating the napkins and taking that backing off. And then napkins, I mean, anyone that's seen any of my previous videos will know I love my rice papers. This was the first time using a napkin in art journaling though, and they really are quite fragile. So just when you are separating and taking the back off, just be really careful, I guess, so you don't rip them, which is quite easy to do, I found. And then I obviously I've gone past it already in the video now, so my kind of commentary is a bit behind, but you will have seen that I used a paintbrush just dipped in water to go around the outline of the gal that I'm using, and that little quote at the bottom there that says magic is something you make, and that going around it with a wet paintbrush made it really easy to tear out the bits that I wanted to keep then. So you will have just seen that under the gel, I didn't want all the paints and the colours from the stenciling and the collage papers, to come through. So I applied a layer of gesso to where I'm placing her. And once that dried, I then attached those napkin pieces like the gel and the quote using the soft gel again and let her completely dry. I did overwork it a bit, being a bit heavy-handed, and just kept going like over the same part, which was a mistake on my part. And I did end up with a couple of tears in the napkin pieces themselves. So here you'll see that I am going over with Inktense pencils. I had a bit of a spot where I'd completely pulled the napkin away and was left with a bit of a white patch. So I'm using my Inktense pencils to cover that up, and I'm drying them at the same time so I can get a more of an opaque colour where the patch was. So I think I managed to fix it up pretty well, and at the end you can't really notice it. Also, I managed to rip part of the quote when I was putting it down. So unfortunately, where I fixed that, it did tape, but my head was completely in the way, so I cut that out, as you wouldn't be able to see it anyway. But I basically used a Pitt Artist pen, which are completely waterproof, and just went over the writing and kind of redone the letter A and K in the word make. So they kind of look a bit odd, but at least the word's now there, and hopefully it doesn't distract from the whole thing. I did want to fix it rather than just kind of try to rip it off or gesso over the page. Like, I wanted to just continue with it, and I guess it's taught me a lesson in the future if I'm using napkins again, just to be really gentle and just don't overwork it. Once you've applied your soft gel, just apply it really gently and leave it to dry. Don't keep going over and over the same part, otherwise it will rip, as I found. So hopefully my mistake will help you out if you're going to use napkins yourself. And napkins, I use a lot of rice paper, but napkins, I'm sure if you watch a lot of art journal videos, are frequently used to get images from, and they are gorgeous to use. But hopefully that tip there will help you out if you haven't tried them yet. So once my girl is completely dry, I want to kind of make her stand off the page a bit, and I'm using some of Jane Davenport's pastel palettes, which are just lovely. I don't want to give her too much colour, so I'm going in with the lightest flesh tones here, just to give the initial outlay of skin colour to her face, and those lighter colours will act as highlights, and I'll then add a few darker tones around other areas in her face, but I'm leaving the lighter tones on her nose and the brow bone, cheekbones, just anywhere that will really catch the light. And around the other areas I'm going in with slightly darker tones, although my girl's blonde and blue-eyed, I didn't want to try and make her too dark. I just want to add a slight layer of colour just so she doesn't blend in completely with my background. Also, I forgot to mention, while I was doing the Inktense, I went over a bit with the pencils, like the water soluble pencils. So I'd pick the colour off using a water brush and then kind of drew lines through her hair just to add more texture. But while I had them out, I decided to add the shadow to the girl just to lift her off the page a bit as well. So you can see there's a shadow around her, and that was just using one of the Inktense pencils. So back to what I'm doing to her face, I've added a skin colour, just a really fair colour, and I am also adding a bit of the pan palettes in the blue to her eyes, just to change the colour up and match the background a bit better. I also use my Pitt pencil to go around, my Pitt pen to go around her eyes, and I think I might have also used a black Posca pen there as well, and drew on little eyelashes and just gave her some eyeliner. And I used a white Posca pen to just do the whites of her eyes again. I also added a bit of Velvet Pastel from Jane Davenport to her lips just to kind of brighten that colour up and give a nice texture. And I used a bit of white Posca pen on them as well, just for highlights where they'd catch the light. And finally, to finish the page, I'm going around with a black Posca and a really squiggly line to add a border. I've done a really squiggly line because it matches those ladies that are at the bottom of the napkin. And just before I done that, I went through one of Art by Marlene's sticker books that reads, "Artistic Adventures, Ride the Rainbow," which I thought was a great quote for the inside of a new journal, as hopefully it will encourage me to recreate that on each page. So we'll see. Here are a few close-ups. I hope it inspires you and that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.